Welcome to The Backstory. I'm your host, Anne Hancock Toomey. Over the course of my career, I've had the privilege to work with and learn from and guide some incredible leaders, mostly in healthcare, but not always. The Backstory is a chance for me to talk to some of them, unpack who they are and where they came from, and how it all influences who they are today and how they lead. Ultimately, each conversation offers a case study in what I'm calling authentic leadership. Let me now invite you into our conversation for the real backstory. All right, today we get to spend time with Rhonda Brandon, Chief Human Resources Officer at Duke University Health System. Rhonda has 3 decades of HR leadership experience, spanning time with companies from IBM to Nike to Colonial Pipeline to prestigious healthcare providers like Duke Health. Welcome to the podcast, Rhonda.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Anne. I can't wait to have our conversation. I'm so excited.
I have really been looking forward to this. Rhonda, our team, of course, here at Girard has had the great pleasure of working closely with you at Duke now for a few years. And my colleagues who get to work alongside you nearly daily describe you as a warm and welcoming leader who gives your team space to do their work while also providing the support that they need to grow and to thrive. You are a thoughtful question asker, and you're willing to roll up your sleeves and work alongside the team. All of these, of course, are really key ingredients to building trust. And so I'm so excited to spend some time with you this afternoon to learn about how you do that. So if you're ready, Rhonda, I would love to dig into your backstory.
Let's jump in. I'm ready.
Okay.
Anne.
All right. Let's start at the beginning. I would love to hear about where and how you grew up.
I was born in Richmond, Virginia, on the south side in an area called Blackwell, which at one point was considered the murder capital per capita of these United States.
Oh my.
Guess what? We called it community. We called it home. I was the spoiled baby girl of 3 and 2 older brothers. My oldest, Johnny, was a special needs baby, a special needs child. It wasn't predicted that he would live a long life, but he beat the odds and he lived until he was 60 years old. My middle brother, Charles, was a genius, straight A student. I always looked up to him, but the best I could do was a B+, and so we're very close. We faced a fair amount of adversity in our upbringing, but through it all, I think it made us stronger. It helped us with our decision making. It helped us with our judgment, our intuition. Our parents worked very hard. My mother was a teacher and actually professor at a university, Virginia Commonwealth University. My father was a postal professional, and they put their coins together to help us move on up to uptown South Side, where life was a little simpler. I'd say it was a little safer. They instilled in us the need to go to college, to get an education. So I attended Hampton University, the historical Black college and university in Hampton, Virginia, and the rest is history.
Talk a little bit about what is something you learned from your parents that shapes how you live or how you lead today?
Great question. I'd say my parents were pioneers. And what I mean by that, when it came to making sure Johnny and his community got the care that he and so many others with special needs deserved, they didn't let up. They didn't quit. They petitioned local government officials. They were relentless at advocating for their needs. And Johnny and his friends eventually reaped the benefits of living independently, eventually, and social support services that they deserved. They also taught us about the importance of, like I said, getting an education and always doing our very best, always. That was a ticket to us getting out of the inner city. And my mom had this saying that I loved to hate, but it finally grew on me, and I even share it with my kids. Be the labor, great or small, do it well or not at all. All of that instilled in me and my leadership style to advocate for others, B, to never give up. I, Rhonda Brandon, do not take no for an answer. I just do not. There's got to be a way. And lastly, I'd say the importance of persevering through adversity. And there's been plenty. But I'd say those are the critical lessons that my parents blessed me with.
Those are fantastic lessons, foundational to who you've become, clearly. Now, is it true that your maiden name is Story?
Yes, my maiden name is Story Like a Book.
Story like a book. It seems pretty fitting for someone who has chosen a career that's really all about people and people's stories.
Absolutely. And one of my very first roles out of college, I was a DJ. I had a radio show. I have a radio voice, in case you didn't notice.
I noticed. It's fantastic.
And I was on the news for a while. I was a news anchor. So Story came with the news of the day. But yes, that's my maiden name.
Now, was that your very first job?
No, my very first job, I worked in high school. I worked from my freshman year of high school at the age of 14. My very first job was at McDonald's for a whopping 2 weeks.
Oh, what happened?
Yeah. I wanted to work at McDonald's. It was a fun place to be. It was right near my high school. And I loved this idea of working a cash register. There's just something about it. At the same time, I had applied for an internship that I didn't get. So went to McDonald's because I didn't get chosen for that internship. And then they called me back. It was with the Social Security Administration. And I worked there for 4 summers as a staff administrator, working with those who came in for their Social Security benefits with disabilities. And so it was really important work. I worked for an administrator named Rusty Spain. Rusty was so cool. He really was. But he taught me the importance of treating all of our clients with respect and compassion. Those people came to us afraid. They were in need of income. And at such an early age, I figured out the importance of how to treat people. I had to pay attention to detail because their applications were so important as to whether they were eligible or not.
That's fabulous. Okay, so you mentioned that you went to Hampton University in Virginia. Tell me, what did you study there? And did you know what you wanted to do for a living?
I studied mass media arts, is what they called it. I thought I was going to be a broadcaster. When I grew up, I told my mother, I told everybody that would listen, I'm going to be the Black Barbara Walters. She'd look at me like, what? And I was like, yes, that's what I want to be. I just was intrigued by the television and just that presence that Barbara had. I wanted to be a TV personality. That's why I studied what I studied. And then here comes Oprah. She stole my dreams. But my path changed. And so here I am.
Oh, fantastic. So you left Hampton University, and was that when you became a DJ or went to broadcast journalism? Tell me what happened once you matriculated.
So part of the DJ and broadcasting it started as part of our studies in mass communication. So we had to do a radio show, and we had a TV station on campus, but it broadcasted throughout the Newport News and Hampton area. And so my goal was to stay at the station once I graduated, but I got called upon to think about this thing called HR. So a friend of mine who was a student at Hampton University also, he reached back and recruited about 4 or 5 of us to come join the IBM Corporation. And to do HR, I had no idea what HR was. What is human resources? It wasn't on my path, but I caught the bus, took a plane actually, and went on up to Gaithersburg, Maryland, where I went to learn about this thing called the IBM Corporation and human resources. So that was my first job out of college.
So as you think back to maybe your IBM days or other days in your early career, were there moments or lessons learned that defined the leader that you've become?
Wow, plenty. I'll tell you a story about one evening, probably 6 weeks into my role. I was leaving out one night, and my recruiter, Bill Dickerson, stopped me in the hallway and said, Rhonda Story, why do you think we hired you? And I said, I don't know, Bill. And I'm here standing in the hallway to impress Bill again. And I'm interviewing again. I said, Bill, maybe it's because of my 3.8 average at Hampton University, blah, blah, blah. No, that wasn't it. Perhaps it was the internships that I enjoyed where I was able to demonstrate my skills and capabilities. I was going for it, right? Communications major,
Right.
I can talk. He said, no. He said, you were a twofer. And I said, twofer? Now, again, 6 weeks into my job, I had no idea what he was talking about. He said, let me explain. He said, when we were closing our EEOC books, you helped us fulfill a quota. You were an African-American woman.
Oh, man, a twofer.
A twofer. And every time I tell that story, Anne, my skin crawls.
Yeah, mine's crawling at present.
I remember standing there, dumbfounded, defeated, deflated, not knowing what this meant. And at the same time, I experienced this fire in my belly. I thank him to this day because it lit something inside of me, and that pilot light is still on, that said, you're going to see what you get for this twofer. So I call that a moment of truth. I call that a big defining moment in my career that was difficult to hear, but I'm glad he told his truth because I know where that makes me stand and the work I needed to do to make sure people saw beyond my skin color and they saw that I could be successful regardless of fulfilling a quota. So.
Thank you for sharing that. My skin's still crawling a little bit, but I can feel that fire also. And I'll tell you, it's different, but I can remember early in my career, I was working for a company and I was asked to staff a booth at a conference. And I'll never forget the head of sales saying to me, your job is to look good, to attract decision makers to the booth so that I can engage them in conversation. I think similar to that moment for you in your career, it lit a fire in me. I could have let that define my self-worth or my value professionally, but instead, it absolutely fueled me to develop a reputation for my intellect or for my strategic counsel. And it also made me vow to help others see their self-worth. So thank you for sharing that story. It was visceral for me. I went right back to that moment when you said that.
Absolutely. And lighting a fire also came with consequences. I'm going to leave it on the mat every day. I'm going to show you I prioritize work, unfortunately, sometimes over my family and other values and other priorities. So it had a double-edged sword, but I've learned over time how to rebalance, how to prioritize in a way that is much more healthy. And I'm still thriving as a result.
Fantastic. So you were at IBM for how long?
I was at IBM for 10 years.
So what came after that?
I went to Hughes Electronics for a little while, then got this call. Hey, we're looking for people to join the Nike Corporation out in Beaverton, Oregon. And I hung up and I told my husband, I said, I got the craziest call about going to Oregon and going to work for Nike. He lit up. What? We get to go to Nike. I said, no, dear, it's just an interview. I don't know if that would go anywhere. Our kids are 18 months and 7 years old. Do you think we're going to go to Oregon? Our roots are here in Virginia. We're not going across the country. And he said, take the call. Now, I have to tell you, my husband is the wind beneath my wings. We've been together about 40 years. And he always has been a champion of fly, soar, do what you need to do. But what I forgot about Oregon and Nike is his best friend played for the Portland Trailblazers. So that was a bit of a boon for him and a big benefit to hang out with Jerome Kersey, his best friend. But I joined Nike and I had another defining moment. I was the head of HR for IT worldwide. I supported the first CIO for Nike and first CIO who wanted to impress, Ken Harris. I don't think Ken ever slept. We were connecting with each other late into the evening because I was a night owl. I was not taking the time to recharge. I'm a high introvert by nature. So what does that mean? I extrovert all day long at work. And if I don't plug in, then and recharge, I'm going to not be too good to anybody. And so I went weeks without plugging in, just catching up, keeping up with Ken Harris. And I had no idea what my introversion meant and that I needed to recharge. One morning, could not get out of the bed. Literally, could not get out of the bed. And I
Wow.
said, Kevin, take the kids, take them to daycare. It disrupted our routine because I would take them. We had our routine. That was Monday. And they left me sitting in the family room with my robe and my pajamas and slippers. And when they got back in the evening, I was still sitting there in my robe, pajamas, and slippers. So this happened through Thursday, where I said, take the kids. I don't know what's going on with me. I'd sit in the living room, robe, pajamas, slippers, staring at our white wall in silence. No TV, no nothing. I had completely burned out.
Yeah. My goodness.
I had no battery. I didn't know where the plug was to charge back up. I was depleted. When you talk about tanks being empty, I was like a car on the side of the road. I could not move. On Thursday, I said showering would be important, so let me try there. And I began to refuel just through that silence, just through reflection and what is happening at this moment. And I was able to restore my energy. And the lesson I learned there was never again. I am not going to take myself to such a limit that I am not whole. So I learned the importance of work-life balance pretty early. I don't have it totally right today, but if I'm starting to smell smoke, meaning I'm burning, I'm going to step away. And what that's led to today is I take off the month of July every year, ever since I've been at Duke.
Wow.
I take off other shorter terms throughout the year, but my colleagues know, my peers know, my staff knows, I'm out in July. But that was a big lesson that I learned at Nike for sure.
Yeah. And to have learned that so early in your career is a gift, truly. I'm curious, are you able or have you been able since that moment to identify what you call smoke in yourself? Like, what are those symptoms? Or do you sort of lean on your husband? Do you guys have a pact where he's holding your feet to the fire?
Both, all of the above. He is so good. And he's a recreation therapist by trade.
Okay.
So he teaches leisure, funny enough, right? I'm the one working like, and he's teaching leisure. And he's, okay, babe, calm down. He'll say, shut off the computer. It's late. Do you see what time it is? It's time for Family Feud. Let's cut everything off. So he is really my rock around that. And how I feel when I'm burning, actually, I feel overwhelmed and a little breathless. I literally have a physical reaction that says, okay, too much. And my husband will look at me and say, okay, you need to calm down.
It's great to have that accountability partner.
Yes.
So did you leave Nike after that incident?
Not right after, but then I got this opportunity to come back to the East Coast because, again, we're from Richmond, Virginia. That's where our roots are. And our kids were still growing up in Oregon, not really having family and broad community. So I had an opportunity to come back east to Atlanta to a company called Colonial Pipeline. It was the worst performing pipeline in the industry at the time. And the CEO at the time was looking for his turnaround team. He recruited me based on a referral, and the rest is history. I learned a lot about pipelining, first of all, and I learned how to meet people where they are. I learned the ability to build credible relationships quickly. At Colonial, I really was the only African-American leader in the organization, only African-American woman at the top and in the C-suite. And so I had to learn how to spar in an environment that perhaps didn't look like me. So I learned how to be the only, the other, but to do all of that with confidence and to, again, build credible relationships. I would go to the pipelining stations, which are distributed around the country, and I wasn't going to go out there in heels and a suit, right? No, I had on my steel-toe shoes and my dungarees, and I went out there and talked to those boys and just built these relationships that are lifelong. I still have contact with a number of those pipeliners and that was a long time ago.
You met them where they were. They would have eaten you alive if you'd shown up in heels, I think,
Oh,
Rhonda.
absolutely. Now, I get funny stares anyway, right? What are you doing here? And on a couple of occasions when I would travel, first of all, we had a private jet. And when I would get off the jet, I wasn't necessarily the last one off. We had our own seats and everything. But every time I got off, they thought I was the president's assistant. Every time. And when some of the areas were so remote and in maybe areas that didn't have necessarily the affinity for me or the likes for me and what I represented, they would tell me, Miss Rhonda, we've got to get you back to the airport before dark.
Wow.
Right?
That's sobering. My
That
goodness.
is. But again, those relationships, that trust I built, they cared for me. They cared for me. I was there for, I want to say, 10 years.
My goodness.
Yeah.
As you look back on your time with Colonial Pipeline, what is it that you're most proud of that you were able to accomplish, especially given all the adversity that you just described?
A number of things. We ended up going from worst to first. So there was huge teamwork. We were able to change the culture. I can't take full credit for that. But we went from not so safe of a pipeline to one of the safest in the country. Mm-hmm. And that was a huge endeavor and accomplishment, I'd say, for the organization. The other thing is, I built long-lasting relationships.
So why did you leave? And is that when you made the pivot into healthcare?
Yeah, got this call. Now, you may hear a theme here. I don't answer all calls I get, but I got this call to consider healthcare in St. Louis. Healthcare was not on my radar at all. Now, my husband used to work in healthcare. He worked with severely handicapped children. Mm-hmm. And that just was a space that was not something I thought I could do. But I got convinced after meeting the CEO at the time, who wanted to bring in leaders in HR specifically from outside of healthcare to infuse some new ideas. Healthcare can be a place where we're going to do it this way always, and not much change is going to occur, especially in HR. We can be traditional about things. He wanted to shake it up a bit. And so he recruited about 5 of us at the same time from outside of healthcare to rebuild, reshape, and rethink the approach we took to human resources at BJC. But another quick story, I'm big on stories. With every move I've made, Anne, there's been prayer involved. I always tell whomever's recruiting me that this is a family decision. And with every move, Anne, to this point, I'd say every move that we've talked about so far, there has been a sign that this is the right thing to do. Let me tell you more. You there? You with me?
I'm with you.
So I'm in Marietta, Georgia, hot Atlanta, I'm telling you, and I've gotten this offer, and my husband and I are like, oh my God, do we want to go to St. Louis? Where is St. Louis, right? My son and I had this Sunday ritual where we would go to the local Publix grocery store and pick up our fried chicken and our potato salad. And it wasn't ready that day. I'm going to go over to the Starbucks that's connected to the Publix, right? And I go look at the mugs. And I'm going looking at the mugs. And I had gotten this off. And this man comes in all of a sudden. And he's unloading a box of mugs. I was like, oh, cool, some new mugs. They're going to be new on the market. Can't wait. What you got? And
yes,
the mug said St. Louis, Missouri.
Did they get delivered to the wrong place?
I yelled at this man. I was like, what are you doing? He said, ma'am, I'm putting out the mugs that we received. I brought the mug home because we didn't have picture phones or picture cameras at the time. Right. And I set it on the counter. And my husband says, oh, God, we're going to St. Louis, Missouri.
It's a sign. Oh, my goodness.
And I've had one with every move. But that's how I really got into healthcare. The sign sealed it for us. And I love being in healthcare. I haven't looked back. It's where meaning and calling come together. Mm-hmm. I call it heart work. We do heart work here because people come to us usually afraid, right? Yeah. They don't come to us like they're going to the mall. They're coming to us for hope. They're coming to us to restore their health. They're coming to us for healing. So absolutely love the journey and have been so blessed since joining healthcare.
What a great story. So as you think back about maybe some of those early days at BJC and the learning curve that you had. Healthcare is a very different place. And of course, BJC's leadership wanted to hire in someone from outside of healthcare. Was there a shock to the system at all, or was it an easy translation from your previous experience?
Shock to system, coming out of Nike especially. Just do it, right? Quick decisions. Let's go. Right. Let's get it. Let's drink our coffee all day and all night. Healthcare is just a very different place. The speed is much different. Now, you can translate HR policy. You can translate programs and practices, but the adoption level for change was much slower. Very slow. And so the five of us would come together and say, have you seen anything like this before? So it was just so good, though, to have peers that we were experiencing the same thing together. And we could push together, if you will. And it was wonderful to see some of our ideas come to fruition. But we had this cohort that could link arms and says, we're going to do this. And we learned the value of change management. You just do not splash things on people and expect them to follow you. So building that skill, of course, was so critically important as we were integrating a lot of new things. Now, I started there in a hospital, so that was the best thing. I could have started at corporate. I actually competed for the corporate job, and the CEO called me and says, hey, I got something different for you. I'm going to pick somebody else for that corporate job we started talking about. And I'm so glad it happened that way, because I could walk along the hallways. I could be one with operations. I could visit patients in the bed. I could talk to providers and doctors and all of the staff to get a real up close and personal experience in healthcare.
You mentioned, Rhonda, change management and the importance of being really thoughtful about how you approach change, particularly in healthcare organizations. So what have you learned? What does it take? What are 3 ingredients to successful change management? This, of course, is near and dear to my heart and ours here at Girard, because it's like half of the work that we do. But I'd be curious what your lived experience has been.
Oh, wow. There is so much change we're going through right here at Duke. The key principles of change from my experiences are you have to understand the stakeholders.
Yeah.
You have to understand those that the change will affect. Get their voices. Understand what they're afraid of, because usually there's a little fear with change.
Right.
You have to have the compelling why. Why are we doing this in the first place, so that you can answer, what does it mean for me, the people that you're affecting? You have to communicate over and over again using different channels that touch the people and in different ways that they can consume information. You have to be as transparent as possible. I always say, people are adults. Tell them the truth. As hard as it might be, if we really have a compelling why and we really have a path ahead of us, let's bring them along. Let's make sure that they understand. And some people will get ahead of you and help you with change. There's that change curve. You've got your 5 to 7.5% that are gone. They're with you. They're ahead of you. Come on, folks.
Yeah, that's right.
You've got that nice happy middle that's kind of watching. Some people, half of the middle are like, I'm going to go too, I think. And the others, I'm going to wait a little while longer in that part of the change curve. And then there's some that are not going to go with you no matter what. You spend your time on this side of that curve. Again, with the compelling why, making sure you understand the hearts and minds of your stakeholders, and you communicate, etc. Those are the key principles, I think.
Okay, so Rhonda, talk to me a little bit about, then you're in St. Louis, you're at BJC, you have navigated the learning curve of healthcare, you are taking that organization through change very successfully. Is there a call from Duke, like a recruiter? What happens? And what's the sign?
There is that call again, and I did have a sign. So, got this call. They explained to me what the job was, and I said, no, thank you. I'm having a great time at BJC. Loving my work. We had a wonderful community of friends that we had built in St. Louis. And the thing that piqued my interest was, it's Duke. Okay, pay attention. Big name. The other thing is it brings us back to the East Coast again. And my mother was aging. So like, okay. But the job is less or smaller than what I had. And the responsibility span was just not there. And so told the headhunter, no, thank you. And she knows me well. And I want to say 6 months later, I'm sitting at my desk at BJC and I get this text that says, Dr. Washington wants to see you right away. Now, I know all my providers. I know who my customers are at BJC. I don't know a Dr. Washington, nor do I recognize this number. So I'm like, okay, who's speaking and who is Dr. Washington? And it was the chancellor for Duke Health. And what he asked the recruiter to do is tell him who declined talking with him.
Interesting strategy.
Interesting strategy. So that was me. And he said, have that person come in, help me to define the job and recruit the right person. I just want them to consult with me. Okay. So I put together a deck and I said, here's what I've done in this world of coming into healthcare. Here's how we've transformed healthcare at BJC. I have my little slides. I'm going to consult with you. I'm going to come prepared. And so I'm walking Gene through these slides and talking through him and what he needs to do and how he needs to think about filling this role. And I said, so Gene, I've been through all of this material with you and I hope it wasn't too overwhelming. So what is it that you think you're looking for? He says, I'm looking right at it. Okay, that wasn't the plan. I'm just here to consult.
Best laid plans.
Best laid plan. So before I could get to the airport, I was like, Gene, that's very kind, but that wasn't the point of the discussion. Before I could get to the airport, I need you to come and be with us and be on a team. He put a full court press on. Had to go home and say, honey, I just had this conversation with this guy at Duke and it's sounding interesting. And here comes the sign, right? So we said, do we want to do this? Oh my gosh, got the offer. And I said, I have to figure out what's the sign? What is the sign? So I went a little bit of faith. I hadn't had my sign yet, but this brings us closer to Richmond. My mother was aging. North Carolina is a beautiful place to live. And it's Duke. So I went out on the ledge, and as I had given my notice, I was getting ready to meet one of my direct reports coming from out of Columbia, Maryland, coming back into St. Louis on this major highway that we have in the St. Louis area. I said, meet me at Red Lobster. I got to tell you something at 4:00. I never meet her at Red Lobster at 4:00 on this highway, but she was like, okay. And I'm never early. I got there probably, 3:30. And I'm sitting here, Chesterfield, Missouri, off the highway, Red Lobster. This family comes out of Red Lobster.
Wearing Duke. They had to be wearing Duke.
Parents and a baby in a carrier. All three of them had on a Duke t-shirt. Called my husband, honey. Guess what I saw? I took a picture and I'm like, drop the mic. Here we go.
I love it. Okay, so you arrive at Duke and you've already met with the chancellor and have laid out what needs to happen. Talk to me about the last few years. You've been there now 8 years, is that right?
Yeah, I call it 8.5 seasons.
Okay.
My team says we're a Netflix series. Every day, every episode is full of mystery and full of some of the edge of your seat riveting stuff. In these 8.5 years, I would say, or seasons, we've done a lot. When I got here, I learned that I really only had one direct report. So my first, I would say, 4 years was building an infrastructure for HR, for the health system. Talent acquisition or recruiting didn't report into HR for the health system. There were a lot of things that were missing centrally. Today, I have 100 people in corporate HR.
Wow.
Most of that is talent acquisition. We have an amazing talent acquisition structure that we put in place just before the pandemic. We are in the experience of changing culture. Remember, I talked about changing culture at Colonial? We are taking a very intentional approach to defining and changing the culture of Duke. One of the things I do, I work so hard and so long during the days, we got to have fun. And this cultural journey we're on, I shared with folks that asked me, why are we doing this? I said, this feels like we have this unkept lawn. We've not defined the do culture. We've not defined the ways in which we want to behave and show up for ourselves and each other. And you know what an unkept lawn looks like, right? Unruly roots, overgrown grass, perennials are dying. It's just a mess, right? And it's unsightly. And you have to feel your way through this lawn to even get through it. What we wanted to do is create a place that you can see the perennials. The grass is well kept. The hedges are well kept. It is a defined landscape that we want people to thrive in. We've come up with cultural commitments, and we're at the early stages of living out this culture throughout our organization for sure. But one of the things that's at the fundamental basis for this is we want people to feel respected and valued, seen and heard, and feel like they belong here. And we just did an engagement survey, and the needle moved so significantly from the last survey that shows we feel like we belong here.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So if there's ever a legacy I want to leave, that's certainly the number one, that we have a place where people want to come, they want to stay and contribute their very best.
Okay, Rhonda, before we talk more about leadership, you have mentioned your husband and your children, and certainly we talked about your parents and your siblings. Family is so important to you. Talk to me a little bit about your family, and particularly your kids.
Oh, my family is my world. My oldest child is Brianna. She's 36. She's a Spitfire. I don't know where she gets that from.
I don't know where she gets that.
And she's in fashion, so she helps her mother put things together. She works for Levi Strauss. She's an amazing, very smart young lady. And I have Miles. Miles is my 30-year-old, and as much as he repelled it, he works in an arm of HR. He did not want to work in HR. But he is on an executive recruiting team for a company called Modern Consulting he's out of Chicago. They're the world to me. And I will say, part of my career and the world in which I worked so hard constantly, right? Woman, hear me roar, I'm working. Sometimes I feel like if I had to have a do-over, it would be to spend more time with my kids. It would be putting work down to pick up and to lift family. My husband set his career down early. When we went to Atlanta, not long after, he set his career down to raise the kids, because at Colonial, we were flying 2 to 3 times a week to visit the pipeline locations, the tank farms, we called them. And so I wasn't there. I missed my daughter's first menstrual cycle. I missed her proms. And we didn't have camera phones at the time that I could see these. We were always close, but we've gotten so much closer in their adulthood. They're amazing kids. Their dad did an incredible job raising them. And we are a very close family unit, very close.
Thank you for sharing that. I think we all struggle with it. I know I certainly do. It's helpful to have such a strong partner in your husband, I'm sure. You also mentioned the role of faith in your life. Talk a little bit about that and how you have leaned on your faith in making big decisions throughout your life, but maybe even on a day-to-day basis. I'd love to hear a little bit about the role of faith in your life.
Yeah, so let me harken back a little bit to Colonial Pipeline again, and I'll fast forward. I was such the workaholic that one day I was actually terminating a person, and they said, you know what, you need to get a life. Ooh, wow. Okay. All you do is work. What do you value? And then I had an executive coach at the time. I was gifted my first executive coach. And I talked to her about it, and she says, your values right now are work. What do you really value? And so I had to come up with these aspirational values, and because I clearly was doing work. So what is it that I wanted to do? What was I neglecting? What did I need them to be? And I reshaped them to faith, family, and work. That was a big ticket because I had neglected my faith. Although the signs were there, I knew my faith, it was all in my bones, but I had not been doing the work to nurture my faith and nurture my spirit. Family was so important, but if I don't have my faith in the strength of God and the work that I do, I can't be everything and what I need to be for my family. And then work was third. I then changed it to faith, family, and fulfillment. Because if I'm going to work as hard as I do, I've got to be fulfilled at it. So my faith was planted in me growing up in the south side of Richmond. Our parents required that we go to church, but it's nothing like when you make the choice yourself to be a believer. And so in all of that, I pray for this organization. I pray for our patients that come to us for hope, health, and healing. It's my life. And I rely on my faith for all decisions that I make, for my daily inspiration, for big decisions I have to make. I always stop and ask for that guidance, and I feel so cared for when I do that. I try not to be alone or do things on my own when I know I could have only gotten here from this little girl from Southside Richmond, Blackwell, to how did I get here? I didn't do it alone, and I know that. So I am so grateful for the blessings every day.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, Rhonda, so as you look back and maybe look around and thinking about leaders that you admire, what are the 3 most important characteristics of the most effective, inspiring leaders?
I think I start with being authentic. Part of being authentic is to be self-aware. It is so critical that we as leaders are self-aware. Who am I in front of you, Ann? I want you to hear, see, and feel that this is the real me. And then that way I can relate to the real you.
Right.
So for me, authentic leadership is so critically important. Compassion, caring about others' stories. Everybody's got one. And when I'm walking these hallways, or I may speak to a peer and they grunt, right? And it's like some people would say, you got an attitude today. To me, I say, you know what? I don't know what you've been through today.
That's right.
So I'm just going to extend you grace and human kindness. Extending grace and human kindness through compassionate leadership is so critically important. And I would say, certainly, bar none, having integrity, being a man, being a woman of your word, following through when you say you're going to do something, being transparent in a way that's helpful. I think those are the primary characteristics of a leader. Oh, and cannot forget, you got to be inspirational. How are the people going to follow you if you're boring? You got to inspire. You got to have that drum beat. I love to brighten my team's day. My refrain of the word that I use after most every meeting with my team is onward. Onward. Let's go. We can do this. Let's keep going.
Is that what you think makes you most effective as a leader?
I think so. I love to inspire. I love to lift.
Yeah.
Life is short.
Yes, it is.
Very short. And I want to have people enjoy their work as much as I enjoy what I do. That's what I hope for any and everyone that does the work that they do, is that they are working to the top of their excitement. I hear here, work to the top of your license, work to the top of your profession. Work to the top of your excitement. What gets you out of bed every day?
That's right.
To make a difference in the places in which you work or people you touch.
Is there anything that is a clear challenge in the way you lead and how you are at work that you're working on?
Yeah, I hate to give bad news.
Me too.
And that's the work that I got to do a lot in HR.
Yeah.
I hate giving bad news and letting people down. That's the hardest part. At the same time, I believe in what Brene Brown says, is to be clear, is to be kind. And even though it pains me to say about what I'm about to say, that's just tough for me. It's just very tough for me. I don't like mundane, rote things. I'm very creative and innovative, really like new ideas and trying new things. So once it gets mundane and rote, put a snore strip on me, I'm ready to do something else. So staying in the game when it's not something I really want to do is probably something I'm challenged with.
Rhonda, we are now we're gonna move into lightning round,
Ooh,
where I
okay.
am going to ask you a series of quick either/ors or questions. I'm just looking for your gut. These are meant to be fun, so don't overthink it. You ready?
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Okay, relaxing vacation or adventure vacation?
Relaxing.
Guilty pleasure to escape from the craziness of life.
Staycation. I love to go to an incredible spa and have massages and facials and nobody with me. Staycation alone. That's me.
It's that introvert in you. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Do you tackle the hardest task or the easiest task first?
Hardest.
Spicy food, yes or no?
No.
Early bird or night owl?
Neither.
You just like to sleep?
I'm great somewhere in the middle.
How do you start your day?
Pulling the covers off slowly. I start with a cup of tea. I try to work out in the morning. And this new thing that I do is I put my feet in the grass.
Really?
Yeah. So I was doing a coaching session for a team one day, and I was asking people, what do you do for your well-being, blah, blah, blah. And I'm doing one-on-ones going around the room. And this young lady says, I put my feet in the grass. I was like, what? She says, yeah. I thought it was the craziest thing. Then I talked to another friend of mine, and she says, girl, I put my feet in the grass. So now, after a good workout and just putting it all on the mat and working out on my little Peloton, I'm a Pelotoner.
Me too.
Treadmill. I go and take my tennis shoes off, my sneakers and my socks off, and I go stand in the grass in my yard.
Wiggle those toes.
It is something about touching nature, literally, it's invigorating. You should try. Go outside today and stand in the grass.
I'm going to.
Just be silent. Be still.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will do. All right. Yeah. Book you're reading now.
Ooh. It was one that my favorite book, I'm just going to say that, is The Book of Joy by the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Amazing book.
Okay. Best book on leadership.
Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek.
Oh, I have it right here.
Yay!
How about
there
that?
We go.
Last time you tried something new.
I ate octopus.
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Good.
Okay.
It was good. Yeah.
All right. Very good. Rhonda, we have come to the end of our time together, and I will end my line of questioning with the question that all good reporters ask, which is there anything more for you to share that you would like to share?
Just my gratitude to you, Anne. Oh. I really appreciated this time. I actually don't like to talk about myself much, but you've made it so wonderful, so easy, and such a pleasure.
Well, it has been an incredible pleasure. And you know what? Bill Dickerson was right. You are a twofer. You are an incredibly inspiring leader and an awesome human. And it's such a joy to be able to spend time with you and to share with the world your backstory. So thank you, Rhonda Brandon.
Thank you for having me. You take care.
You too.